quickly introduce you for the recording. 1 second, I'll turn on my camera. Okay, I think probably maybe there's still some people to join, but for everyone who is already here, good evening, and thank you for joining the SOM recap session today. Just to quickly introduce our committee, we are EHL Recap is officially an EHL committee since this semester. So what exactly do? We provide material by students for students. So we organize recap sessions before midterms and finals like today. We also upload some material on our website. I can drop the link in the chat if you would like to check it out. And we also were very active on Instagram, so if you want to see when our next sessions are, go check it out. Just so you know, so today our tutor is Alexandra. She is a BOSC 4 student. She's currently doing her internship, so she did the SOM exam last semester. Just so you know, we're trying to help everyone, but we're not accountable for your mistakes on your exam. We're just trying to help you, so I'll just pass on the word to Alex now to continue this session.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, well, let me share my screen, see if I can put my presentation on. Why can't I? Okay, hold on. Can everyone see my the presentation? Okay. So there's gonna be I'm gonna go very fast through this because I'm telling you the exam's gonna be a lot of formulas. So if you thought you're having to memorize your theory, I don't know how it's gonna be this year, but in my year, doing the exercises rather than knowing the theory by heart was way more important, and understanding a bit how to spin around your formulas, but they're pretty straightforward. I don't know how many of you were in the chat just about starting now, but as I said, in my case, the exam was more like story, a model that would follow the thematic steps, and you're taking a text and applying from step to step several exercises that range from distributions to weighting lines, so far and so forth. They're basically kind of taking you through everything, and when I say everything, it's basically almost every formula that you've learned. So on the definition side, let's say the first part of the steps, what we've often found was this about the VOC, the drivers, the CTQ, and they're actually pretty straightforward questions from what we had. Meaning, you're presented with a text, they put you in the time, space, and the place where you are. So let's say you're working for a cruise line. And let me see if I have some questions from that, just so you'd hear how they sound. In any case, if they're in any bit similar, you can see just the presentation or my screen.
We see your screen as well. So if you move, see everything.
Okay, wait, let me change that. Give me just a second. So now you see just the presentation, correct?
I think yes.
What do you see?
We see.
For now, we see a black screen.
Really?
Yeah, it's good. No, it's good.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So, where was I? Okay. So in the first step, the define step of your DMIC, where they introduce you to everything that you have, usually average number of passengers, kind of like the atmosphere of the entire workplace from a customer's point of view and an employee's point of view. those are more or less pretty theoretical questions. So they tell you, like, using the Lean Six Sigma methodology, the DMAIC you learned, answer the following questions. And for example, one would be, if you put yourselves in the shoes of your passenger of a certain cruise ship, let's say, could you name drivers of customer satisfaction, meaning your VOC? Anyone has any ideas? Like, just imagine you're on a cruise ship, you're a passenger. What could be factors that represent the VOC? So just to give you an idea, the VOC is very, let's call it, I wouldn't say necessarily general, but very subjective. So it refers to the gastronomy on board, the comfort of the cabins, the service on board. So I'd say more a bit general. And then they can ask you also about the CTQ. Usually it's mentioned, which is a bit more exact. So in your text, you can actually identify that they will say the food is too hot, and they'd say like it was 15 degrees above the cooking temperature that has to be if it's a beef steak. So they're actually pretty detailed and measurable criteria of such an aspect. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Okay. Then part of this as well is going to be, again, the forecasting. You'll definitely go through quite a few exercises. Usually, again, I'm not speaking for the exam, but in my case, what I've seen was you'd be taken through at least 2 to 3 forecasting methods. We had the SMA. We had actually all of them. We already went through them during the midterm. There's nothing changed. You'll have your template, and I guess it's just pay attention to your values. If it's your weighted average, always pay attention to the order that your weights are given in. Make sure that they add up to 1, because no one says it can't be a tricky exam. So just make sure that you can apply everything and that the values apply. Make sure that you calculate your alpha well and that you take into consideration your N. And that's pretty much about the forecasts. As long as you know how to apply the formula, you shouldn't be in any difficulty. And this presentation, which I'll probably drop in the chat after, should have the minimum amount of formulas that would help you for the exam. This is also part of the forecasting part, but I broke it down in steps. We went through this during the midterm, so it's more like a recap. Again, actually now pay a lot of attention between what's your margin of error, mean squared error. It might be present more than once. Hopefully not. But I think that the best way to check that you have to calculate either the forecast error or your mean squared error is read the text, underline if it helps, but be very careful with it. Chapter 4, those have been said also for the midterm, nothing changes. This is usually quite a bigger part of your exam, but it's I mean, as long as you have your inputs and your calculations right, it shouldn't be very different. And there's not much to understand on this, as normally they're already given, or the story already explains what you have to do. So again, read the text pretty carefully, but make sure you're not spending time on every single word and try to find the conspiracy behind it. Read it, make sure it went through your head, and then go in your Excel and always make sure that to check if your values are already in Excel, or you have to input them from the task, because you won't want to lose any time, honestly. Regarding final chapters, I don't know if this was the exact order that you had from your professor, but definitely, I guess you went through waiting lines. And the biggest piece of advice is know how to use your MMK tables. If you understand how to use that, then you're set, because the only thing that you would actually have to know, or let's say study or pay attention to, is the way they formulate their questions. So it means look at their wording so that you would understand really well if you have to search for your P0, PW, the amount of customers in the system, if it's an average time, if it's an average length. In this case, on this slide, I underlined how they correlate and how they are usually present in questions. So you wouldn't necessarily have an excuse for not getting it, because if it says customers, you have to think that's going to be one of your L's. Then again, they're pretty straightforward. Just make sure you understand which type of length of average number of customers it is. I think chapter 5 it's a big part, but appears in sequences of like 2 to 3 questions. That was in the case of our exam. From time to time, we had another question. Usually the way they would put them would be, hold on, this material is in French, so I don't understand it. Let me see if I found one in, this is in French as well. Let me open up my past exam so I can give you an example. I actually, there we are. So this is kind of how they are formulated. So what is the probability that the customer has to wait in line before being served? What is the average length of the queue? I feel like the average length of the queue is very, very common, and it could be tricky, but I mean, as long as you pay attention, it shouldn't be rocket science. What is the average time that the customer would spend between entering and exiting? If it's formulated like that, automatically think about the system from the beginning till the end. But otherwise, the rest of them, everything is inputted in your MMK. And what additional thing they could ask you is the units in which you should present the number, because your MMK actually just gives you it gives you the value, but it doesn't give you the units. So sometimes you have to say whether it is customers, percentage, time. And I think I said here before, yes, if they ask you about the average time, make sure you multiply it by 60. Because if you would open up your drop-down list of units per se, you'll have to look whether you're presented with minutes, hours, or whatever. But normally, if it's given, you times it by 60, and that's your answer. Moving on to chapter 6. Here it is, your control charts. Main ones, your X chart and your P chart, the following values are pretty much given in the order you should calculate them and assure that you've completed your exercise. So complete your average per day, your range, your X bar, basically your daily average, your R upper limits and lower limits. Graph, but usually it's easily done by you select your data, go to insert, recommended charts, and usually it's from the first options because maybe you have additional questions on interpreting the data that you have, or if not, luckily, by just calculating the charts, you should be good to go. But again, for process control charts, I doubt there's anything more to say besides make sure you calculate attentively and pay attention always at your P bar. It refers to your failures, your complaints, basically the incorrect numbers. So if you're amount of negative, you need your negative percentage, the percentage of negative reviews or complaints that you get, not the positive ones. Then the rest is maths or Excel. Now, to get an idea, they could look nice or they could look pretty big, like it looked in my previous during my final exam. That was the X chart that we have to create. I don't know how clear it is on the screen, but although it has a lot of values, it looks pretty long. You can see that first column, it calculates my daily average. Second one calculates the range. Then you have your upper limit, your lower limit. And then it just had like an A and B two questions at the end that would make sure that you understand the data, such as what would be your average or if it's volatile or not. In that case, you look if your graph is above your average line or underneath, aka your points of the upper limit and lower limit. But for that, you need the graph, which I believe, hopefully, it is provided. I don't know if the professor mentioned this or not. But I know in my case, I had to draw it myself, if I'm not mistaken. Any questions so far? Nope. Awesome. Chapter 7, Inventory Management. I hope this is a pretty, let's say, complete breakdown of what can be given to calculate and actually pretty explained, so not just in images. I also input the Excel formulas for you. Your ordering cost, unit processing cost, and annual holding cost are usually given. And with those, you may be asked for some additional calculations afterwards. Everything kind of flows also in the order that they're given on this slide. Pay attention at your signs and pay attention at the units that they ask, if it's days, months, weeks. And also double check with your task, so the text that you're provided, to make sure that you're in line with it. Otherwise, this should be a table that wouldn't take a very long time to actually be completed. And I guess that's pretty much it. Always pay attention to your lead time, because it depends on the theory that they give you in your exam, how you can calculate it, and also pay attention to your safety stock. And that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, let me know. If not, I'd be more than happy to stop the recording and